how when you really fully understand yourself, you can really tap into yourself and, hi Jennifer, and really strengthen your bond with yourself to make life easier and in flow. So I have got a bit of a cough, so I do apologise if I start. There we go, right on cue. If I start, but I'll try my best. I've got a nice vitamin C cup of tea here, so hopefully that'll help. So quite often what we see, and what I've experienced myself, is that we tend to look outside of ourselves for validation. We tend to try and fill ourselves up from things outside of ourselves. And if you're not new around here, you'll have heard me say this before, how we tend to search for things outside of ourselves to try and fill ourselves up and validate who we are and why we are. And this can be like an example of this is social media engagement, right? So getting likes and engagement on social media. Another example of this is online shopping, right? Buying yourself something, or even just shopping in general, and to try and fill some kind of empty need that you have, excuse me, inside. And when we fully understand ourselves and tap into ourselves within, what we find is that them needs and desires tend to be less emotionally driven, and we can really truly tap into ourselves and understand who we are and why we are. So what happens then is we tend to have these beliefs around who we are, how we are, and why we are, and our place in the world. Now, our beliefs can form our whole version of reality. So like me sat here now, it's estimated that there's around 11 million bits of information that's constantly sorry, trying not to cough, that's potentially going to become part of our awareness and what we filter into, then what we see in our reality. And based on our beliefs, that determines what we decide to pay attention to. So we have something called the reticular activating system. Okay, now this is actually a group of brain cells located at the stem of the brain. Now, this, if you imagine it like a door, because how I like to describe it is like a door at the front of your mind. So if you imagine when that door opens, that determines what you're going to pay attention to. So coming back to these beliefs, when we have certain beliefs, for example, I can't do that, that will determine what our reticular activating system allows your brain to filter in, which then creates your version of reality. So let's say, for example, you have a limiting belief of I can't do this. What happens is your brain is going to notice all of the things in your reality that back up that belief of I can't do this, right? This is just an example. So, so what happens then is your version of reality is going to be projecting that you can't do that, right? Whatever that is. It could be generic, that you generally don't believe that you can do things easily. And this was definitely one of my beliefs. So our beliefs begin to become formed within our imprint period between the ages of 0 to 7, and potentially even earlier. Now, part of the training that I deliver in timeline therapy, we talk about how and where beliefs are come from, and we ask, was it in the womb or before? And sometimes the subconscious can throw up metaphors. It potentially could be before. We've worked on things where people have said it was a past life. So who knows, right? I'm not saying that this is true or not. It could just be a metaphor from the subconscious mind. But one thing I do know is that within the imprint period, hi Christine, and between the ages of 0 to 7, we're like sponges, right? And we're soaking up all of the information that's going on around us, everything. So everything our caregivers are saying to us, everything our parents are saying to us, we're watching our parents' behaviors, we're paying attention to their beliefs, we're really soaking up everything from everyone around us and forming our beliefs and our personalities. So when I gave you the example of a limited belief that I had, I'm not good enough, right? I had a limited belief that I didn't feel good enough to do stuff, and it tainted my previous business. I closed it down because I didn't believe I was capable of growing it to the plans that I had, and it sabotaged my relationships. I sabotaged myself. I was really judgmental towards myself because of this belief of I'm not good enough, right? And this happened within my imprint period. It started to become within my imprint period. And it's not necessarily any big traumatic events or anything like that. Sometimes limiting beliefs can be strengthened from traumatic experiences in life and significant emotional events in life, but often they're not. It's literally just simple things like this. So the first time I ever remember not feeling good enough was when I was about 6 and my sister was shouting at me because she told me I was crap at singing. So I laugh about it now, but at the time it was really upsetting. And it was the first time I ever recall ever not feeling good enough, right? So this was like the first time I ever remember it. I may have felt it before that, but consciously that's the first time I can remember it. The next time I felt not good enough, I was playing in the playground at school and nobody wanted to play with me. And it left me feeling not good enough. I'm not good enough to have friends. I'm not good enough to be able to do this. The next time I remember not feeling good enough was I'm a dancer. So I'm actually a trained dance teacher and I'm a trained dancer. And I used to do dancing classes every single week. And I was offered a solo part and it never happened. It never came off. I was offered the solo part. I was told I could have it. And then it never happened. And that left me feeling not good enough. The next time, another time at school, I struggled to be able to tell the time at school and to learn how to tell the time. So I was kept back and I was put in extra classes. So as you can see, like none of these things are major traumatic experiences, right? And they're just simple things that have no real reflection on the other person in the event and their standpoint. Like my sister was just a child as well, so it wasn't like she was being vindictive or nasty. It was just the situation that happened. The dancing thing, so when I finished dancing, in fact when I was about 15, I realized that my mum couldn't even afford to send me to the dancing classes, let alone send me to private classes to get a solo. So all of these things that happened in my life built up this belief of I can't do that, or I'm not good enough to do that, right? And so what happens then is my subconscious belief is I can't do that, I'm not good enough to do that, I'm not enough to do that, whatever. And what happens is remember I said that there's estimated 11 million bits of information that can potentially be within our awareness. Our subconscious is filtering that information through based on our beliefs. So if our belief in the example that I'm using is I can't do that, or I'm not good enough to do that, the information that's being filtered through is backing up that belief, and then I'm projecting that out into the world, which creates my version of reality, right? So when we understand this, right, this concept and how our minds work and why our minds work the way that we work, we can truly understand, like, firstly, why am I behaving the way that I behave? And secondly, how to, I said as well, like we try and fill ourselves up with all of these things outside of ourselves externally to try and fill this need, this emptiness, this something in ourselves. When actually what we need to do is we need to clear the slate of all these limiting beliefs, all these BS stories we're telling ourselves, to kind of clear that out and clean that up so that we can then truly tap into ourselves and truly understand ourselves, so that we can then have a look at these external things that are influencing us and decide whether or not these are things that you want to influence you, that can be helpful and inspirational, or whether it's something that you can actually just discard and is not relevant to you, right? So an example, when I told you about online shopping, right? A lot of people online shop emotionally, right? I feel a bit down, I'll buy myself something to make myself feel better. It's trying to fill this need up. Now, when we understand that we act in certain ways, and that one is just an example, we can then ask ourselves better questions and understand why that happens, and if it is something that you do want to take action on, or if it's something that you can acknowledge and kind of change the way you think about it and change the way that you look at it. Because the goal necessarily isn't to stop you buying the item, it's to understand why you are doing it and if it is a benefit or if it's causing a problem, right? Because it could become obsessive as well, which obviously then becomes a problem. So what do we do about this? Like, what do we do about this if there's some situation where we're trying to fill ourselves up from outside ourselves? And an example that I gave earlier as well was social media posts, right? Social media posts, if we're getting engagement or not, if people are liking our posts, and how we then create this warped, distorted perception that by having engagement it means that we mean something, or by buying the item it means that we mean something. The goal is to clear this slate. Well, firstly understand how our minds work and why we think the way we think, and then clear that slate so that we can what's the word I'm looking for, have a different point of view from these situations. So there are loads of different things I teach within my neuro-linguistic programming training, and there are loads of different ways that we can understand what the root cause of these problems are. So that can help us to have a different viewpoint on it and understand why it's happening and understand why we operate the way we operate in the first place.